everyone. So today we have Hassan, Aisha, John, and Dan. So before each introduction, before their question, they'll briefly introduce themselves to everyone. So my first question is for Hassan. Universities have traditionally focused on teaching technical knowledge, but AI is changing the nature of many entry-level data tasks. If you were redesigning data analytics program from scratch today, what would you add, what would you remove, and what would you put more emphasis on to ensure that graduate students remain relevant over the next decade?
Thank you for your, is it working? Okay, perfect. Thank you for your question, Patty. So I am Hassan Baschamas, the Associate Dean of Data Analytics at the University of Niagara Falls, Canada. Actually, I was really fascinated in the previous panel. They said so many similar things of the things that we're probably going to discuss today. When it comes to redesigning the way that we are teaching students in data analytics, it's a challenge by itself because the environment and the market is changing rapidly, and by the time that you understand and you go into the research to understand what you have to add into the curriculum, then the next term things changes again. And then we are in a complete race between what to add, what to take out, what do we teach the students. However, I think all of us, we can agree on something that is also mentioned in the previous panel, the communication. Like the technical stuff, yes, we used to emphasize more on teaching the students SQL and Python and Tableau and Power BI and these kind of things. It's becoming much easier than before because of artificial intelligence. However, artificial intelligence is not able to solve the critical thinking of the students. And that's why I would, and this is what we are doing right now, incrementally, we are adding more like business mindsets, communication skills, working in groups, this kind of things into our curriculum, no matter what the curriculum is. Probably around, we have a plan to get it up to 30% of the program to teach these soft skills, because this is what we need the students to be. And again, I'm hearing it from a lot of employers. Yes, your students are so good in all the technical things, they create amazing dashboards, but when it comes to explaining to the owner of this business why this dashboard exists, they are struggling to do that. Or what is in that dashboard, they are struggling to do that. It's similar to creating the best product, but you are not able to tell me why it is the best product. Yes, I agree with you, it is the best product, but I don't know why it is the best product. You are not able to sell this best product. You are not able to communicate that best product. So this is what we are trying to teach the students right now. And this is not only like we have to wait to do it, we have to start doing it now.
Great answer. And this is something I notice a lot with my students as well, is that they're strong technically, but we need to improve the communication to non-technical audience. My next question is for Aisha. As AI models become increasingly powerful, there is growing concern that people may trust algorithms without fully understanding them. How do we prepare students to be both effective users of AI and critical evaluators of AI-generated output?
That's an excellent question, and I think the answer is actually related to Hassan's as well. There's no doubt we need to prepare students for evaluating AI in its use. But I actually often think about this as a director of data science. How do I prepare my students now for what they need tomorrow? And I often go back to thinking about a mechanic. Because if you think about a car 30, 40 years ago, there were no self-diagnostics in them. And the car is fundamentally running on mechanics and hydraulic processes. So mechanics would understand these processes very well and then use them to be able to troubleshoot. But then once we have these diagnostics, it helps them to identify quicker, well, where in the car might there be a problem. And these days, the car is a giant computer. It has so many sensors that are telling us what we're doing. How are we in the right lane? Are we driving too fast? Is there something behind us when we're reversing? So the mechanic today still has a job, but they have to understand what those sensors are doing, how they work, in the sense that when they can read these different codes, then they also need to understand how to operationalize the situation to fix whatever that problem is. And so I think we're going through a similar kind of revamping in the workforce, where as these different algorithms come up, yes, there's some fundamental data literacy that our students do need to have when they get into the workforce. But today, they also need to know how to work with the AI. Maybe they're not the one that's actually developing the algorithms that are being used, but they need to be able to know, am I getting back something that makes sense? Am I able to am I using this particular product or in the right way, or this algorithm in the right way? And at the end of the day, if a decision is being made, am I recommending a patient for a certain treatment? Am I accepting a customer for a loan? I have to have a defensible way of arguing or explaining that decision that was being made. So I agree, you need this explainability, and we need them to understand how to check or verify what that output actually is. So now going back to your question, how do we do that in the education sector? Working with industry partners is a really great way of getting some of that realistic case studies, and whether that learning, experiential learning, and the use of AI in the classroom is coming from a co-op, or coming from a major research project, coming from a case study that's covered in class, or a hackathon. We need it to come from employers who can provide the motivation and the concrete example and the context for using the AI. But then we also need to be able to stand back and realize, okay, we need to break this process down into bits. So if I'm trying to look at an insurance claim and then decide, look at the case that the customer brings in, what is their policy, look at their claim history, and is this a claim that I'm going to approve? The employee needs to be able to break that down into those different pieces and think about each one of those. So those examples from the employer are going to be key for doing that, and then do it in a way that's transferable. So even if I'm thinking of the process within the context of insurance, hopefully the process is the same if I have a different case study in, say, marketing, even though the domains are very different. So those are the types of ways that we have to go through with this, and building the relationships with employers and trust with them that we want to create students who are going to be good future workers for you, and developing that trust hopefully brings the buy-in, and then also allows us to enrich our programs, provide that needed training and experiential learning that our students will need to enter that workforce.
Thank you. Excellent response. Very insightful, and I like the connection with industry, and this is key there. My next question is for John. Organizations today have access to more data than ever before, yet many still struggle to make better decisions. In your experience, what separates professionals who generate insight from these, who actually influence decision and create impact?
Thank you very much. My name is Jean-Claude Victor. I am a quantitative economist at Export and Development Canada. And so I would say there is 3 factors that separate those two profiles. First, it's the understanding of the business problem. Second, it's basically how they connect the analysis to decision. And third, it's communication. So let's look at the first factors. Some people focus mainly on data, other people focus on decision. But the professional who create impact, they start asking a simple question: what decision are we trying to make? They do not start with asking what model to build or what data to use. What they do instead is they try to understand the real problem and what the decision maker actually needs to know. If the question is not clear, even a very strong analysis will not be useful. So the second factor, as I said, is connecting analysis to decision. Many professionals are very strong technically. They can build tools, model, run analysis, but more often, decision makers are not always looking for more numbers. They are looking for clarity, direction, and a way to better understand trade-offs, right? So when someone is presenting an analysis, the first profile will basically say, okay, this is what the data shows. But the second profile will basically say, this is what it means, and it is what you can do next. And I think this is basically the main points between those two profiles. And third is about communication. If the message is too complex, it will not be used. And if it's unclear, it will be ignored. So professionals who create impact, they basically know how to explain complex ideas in simple terms, and they also know how to adapt their message to their audience and build trust over time.
Thank you. Seems like we have a theme, communication, to focus on communication for students that are here. My next question is for Dan. Startups often adopt new technologies much faster than large organizations. From what you are seeing in innovation ecosystem, how is AI changing the skills that entrepreneurs and employers are looking for when they hire new graduates?
Yeah, it's a great question. And just for context, I don't come from the education perspective. I come from the innovation perspective. So I'm the CEO of a large business incubator in Niagara Falls, but I'm also an entrepreneur and founder of a medical device company that I invented 7 years ago that's currently being used in hospitals and long-term care. So my perspective changes a little bit, and what we're starting to see is that the shift is actually happening right now. I deal with a lot of startups on an annual basis that are using a lot of AI tools to automate a lot of their workflow. In fact, I was having a conversation with a founder not too long ago who invented this really, really cool app. It's an app that uses a tablet, a cell phone, or drone footage to scan vineyards. And the AI in there can scan the vineyards and determine diseases before they're even visible to the human eye. And being able to determine that disease and come up with a solution for that saves that crop grower hundreds of $1,000s in productivity every single year just by identifying those results earlier. And the student is actually from the University of Niagara Falls who built that. I think he was a data student as well too. But when we were talking about, he's looking right now, people to hire. And when we were talking before, is that 2 years ago he might have needed a junior analyst, maybe a coder, maybe somebody specializes in marketing, maybe somebody who specializes in customer outreach, but he was able to automate most of that using AI. Now, what he's seeking is somebody who can actually interpret those AI outputs and measure them for accuracy and validation, who can be able to validate and do deep due diligence on some of those AI models, because not everything that AI spits out is always accurate all the time. So you still need to validate a lot of that as well too. And then taking those AI outputs and presenting them as practical business solutions. So what we're starting to see with a lot of these startups is they're not necessarily looking for multiple people. They're looking for these unicorn individuals who have cross-sectional, experience in a lot of domains, whether that's marketing, whether that's sales, whether that's coding, whether it's implementation, whether it's data analysis. And we're starting to see a lot of that happen, and the shift is occurring right now. And what we're noticing is that we're going from hiring people based on their credentials to what's based on their capabilities, based on their adaptability, based on their ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn. We discuss a common theme here is how AI is changing so frequently, exponentially, if you will, not linear. So being able to be adaptable and say, listen, I'm going to learn something, and within a month's time, I might have to unlearn that and relearn something new. And I think that's very powerful. I think it's very powerful that I think what we're looking for in a lot of the people, especially in the startups, are looking for people to have that communication. Communication with individuals, but also communications with technology. A lot of the AI models right now are based on credits, right? And you're inputting that, and the more efficient you are communicating to that AI agent or the AI model, the less credits you're going to use, the more impactful you're going to be for that business. And that's huge. So I think the shift is coming to, we need people that are capable, creative, communication, and problem solving. And then being able to take all of that and explain it to the leaders of the organization, which a lot of these leaders of these organizations that we work with may be ones that are not necessarily comfortable with that technology, and they're still learning. So being able to communicate that, which was a common theme that Hassan said and a lot of others said here too, to leaders of organizations is so impactful. So again, just to summarize, that we're seeing that we're not necessarily looking for people that have the theoretical credentials, but we're looking for people that have the capability, the people that are able to adapt and move quickly on their feet. And what's very interesting right now is that we're starting to see a lot of people be hired while they're still in university, or even before they get to university, because they grew up in a world where they're always adapting to technology. They were born in the world of internet and computers. I remember when a lot of us were probably applying for jobs, we had to put in that we're proficient in Microsoft Word and Microsoft PowerPoint, Excel, and you know what? A good person can type 120 words per minute. Well, that's all irrelevant now. That is all irrelevant. Those skills are not irrelevant now. So now, AI adoption is not a nice to have on a resume, it's a must. And being able to use a lot of those models and a lot of those softwares makes you a lot more powerful candidates for these startups, and it helps you to get into these organizations earlier and make much more of an impact early on, as opposed to taking months and years to learn the organization before you finally make that impact. So that's where we see a lot of that transition happening.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the audience?
Hi, my name is Joshua. I just finished my second year of data science at Brock University. So my question is, many students I know struggle to find a job in the industry that they studied. What should a student and new graduates do to find entry-level jobs in the data industry, especially with AI replacing a lot of the entry-level employee responsibilities, as was mentioned earlier? And also, as was mentioned earlier, with the communication and that skill and a lot of those soft skills. What would you suggest students do to learn the soft skills of communication and business intuition in their own personal lives?
Thank you for this question. Definitely AI solved a lot of problems, and actually it's affecting the market and the employability. For example, I'm just going to give you an example. Since I sit on this chair, my back has been hurting me so far. And AI is not able to solve this problem so far. So, is it comfortable, these chairs? Is not.
No, not really.
Yeah, not so,
Chair needed
not really. Not really.
The air conditioning.
exactly. So, this is very important point, because definitely AI is there. However, it's not only, its presence is not enough. The knowledge is there, but building our skills on that knowledge, this is what we need. And again, like 500 years ago, 100 years ago, I don't know when, universities were good by providing people with knowledge. This is why people went to the universities, because they want to get educated, because there's no other places in this world that they can get that knowledge except from the university. You have these professors who read all these articles and books, and now they are in the classrooms telling the students how to do things. Now knowledge is accessible. And sometimes students are teaching me things. I'm in classroom, and then they tell me, no, there is a better way of doing this, especially in coding and things like that. So what is my job now is just to guide them, just to, instead of going through this massive knowledge, I'm just drawing the way for them, and then they can get it here and there. Will AI affect our jobs and the entry level? Yes. But this is similar to how machines affected the world and interrupted the whole thing about how we do things. Now the students, they have to focus on not entry levels, because They don't exist anymore. They have to be multidisciplinary. And knowing data science is, especially now, it's booming, and a lot of students are getting into this major and actually are graduating and finding jobs. It's booming, really, it's booming. Not because they know data science only, but because they know data and everything surrounding the data. And this is what helped them. And if you think that once you graduate from the university and you finish your education, that's it, you will land the $1 million job, it doesn't happen this way. We are in a very fast-moving, dynamic environment where this knowledge will be completely obsolete if you don't update it on a regular basis. And this is what you have to do. And I think I chose a very bad major because I always have to keep myself updated. Like if someone chose probably literature or geography or things like that, it's sometimes it gets updated like every 100 years or something like this. But in technology and in information systems, every 1 month there's something new. So you have to always keep yourself updated, but definitely once you do that, you will be in a very safe place.
Just to add to that, I think, one thing you said is, what happens when we graduate, try to find a job. And my challenge to you is why wait for that? Why wait to graduate? Why not get involved now? We have a great partnership with the University of Niagara Falls where we work with a lot of our startups, hundreds of startups a year, that we plug the students right into that startup. So given that direct experience at a very early age, making impactful decisions with that startup, sometimes students are looking for interns with the big companies, because they see a huge career path growth. But in the end, it's going to be a lot more treacherous of a path to go through that than to work directly with younger companies and be more into day-to-day operations, be more into decision making. So what I would encourage you to do is go to your local incubators and accelerators and meet with startups there, see how you can plug yourself into them. And right off the bat, it may not be something that's a paid gig, but it might be an equity gig. And that could be far more valuable than a paid opportunity. And while you're studying, it doesn't mean that you can't be getting experience as well. So that when you graduate, you've already had a long list of experience working with different companies, different startups, plus the education to support it as well too, which makes you a better candidate. And if you can showcase, how you impacted that business through data, through adoption of AI, that makes that resume a lot stronger.
I'd actually I'd echo something in that the experiential learning, gaining it while you're a student, is very valuable. So even at the University of Guelph, we have students that are put in admissions or alumni affairs or other units thinking of the university as an institution to gain some of that knowledge, not just from our industry partners. But there's this phrase that keeps going around that we're losing entry-level positions, and I actually would like to rephrase that in that the entry-level position is changing. There are always going to be entry-level positions, but what does that mean, and what is that person doing? That's what's going to change. Right now, I believe we're losing, quote unquote, these current entry-level positions because the AI that is being implemented in the workplace, there's already senior level employers that the industry can rely on that can be the critical evaluators of that AI and that can judge, hey, here's a gap where it can be used. Yes, it's being used safely or properly or what have you. Those people will leave at some point. They will retire. And a new workforce needs to come in, but they need to come in at this higher level, not the same type of entry level as before. And even if they can catch up on that technical domain knowledge, they don't necessarily have the application domain knowledge. And so going back to this idea of working while you're a student, that can also help gain that type of experience as well, but not thinking of no entry level. It's a new look of what entry level is.
Great. Maybe I can talk about that also, because in Export and Development Canada, for example, in the last year, we had a couple of student intern that work with us, and the more successful interns were those who basically had this ability to very fastly adapt themselves to the business environment. And in general, they use the technology very well, but they have also this capability to bring insight for the organization. So being able to understand very fastly what the organization is, understand the culture, this is what the previous panel was about, is absolutely key, because it is the way that you can understand how you will use this technical ability to bring value to the organization. So I think this is basically key: learning, understand the organization very fastly, what is the value, what kind of value that you can bring that will give your own value in the organization.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the audience?
Thank you. I wanted to just follow up on your point about the entry-level positions. So I guess the way somebody used to be able to do like those non-entry-level positions was they would work under somebody and do sort of the task, and so there is like this level of mentorship. And if the entry-level positions are changing, is that changing that relationship? And so will those people in those other types of positions be well prepared to replace somebody who retires? Or how do we prepare people for that role when we don't have the same pipeline as before?
So I think this actually relates back to the original question that I was asked. And there are a couple of different aspects to it. So one is this idea of shadowing, right? So there still needs to be some type of, it's challenging right now because there isn't as much loyalty between employer and employee, and it's mutual. So as an employer, they don't feel like necessarily I need to invest in someone and I'm going to train them and now they're going to leave, right? And then at the same time, we have academia that is supposedly training. So how do we change that relationship? Because it was before, academia provides this technical, foundational, fundamental level knowledge, and then they go out in the workforce and they expand on that. Maybe they use some of it, maybe they don't use any of it, but they learned how to think or something, right? And then it's in the workplace. But now, I think there has to be a change in that relationship between academia and industry, and understanding what aspects are we doing. So being able to have something like a case study or an experiential learning opportunity helps a student to use AI at a certain level and be able to gain some of those skills. So then when they do move into the workforce, there is this synergy and added value for that student as they're being trained. And I do believe at some point, the upper administration or senior level positions, they will be replaced by somebody, right? There might be an adjustment period depending on where we are in the AI and how fast we are at adopting. They will be replaced. But the question is, how can we best prepare students for that experience, and how can we work with industry to also understand how training a new grad is not the same as before. It has to be different as well. And then engaging academia in that process so that we can work together, because both want to create future workforce.
I'll take a minute. I haven't seen that AI completely replaced entry-level positions. I mean, until now, I can't think of an example where AI completely at all, like that job doesn't exist anymore, and it took it completely. I can see that it replaced certain tasks within the entry-level positions. Will we get there? Probably. The pace that we are going to now, it shows that there's a lot of advancement, and probably we will get to that point. However, now it's acting as a decision-making, tools, helping in making decisions, funneling data, helping in visualization, things like that, making tasks much easier. Yes, but completely changing the whole thing. Now, I didn't see that, and like with machine learning and supervised learning, I don't know if we are going to get into there or not. Thank you.
Just one more. I just want to make one more point, and we're starting to see a lot of shift in organizations too, where their hiring practices have changed. A lot of big organizations, what they used to do is they would post a job internally first to say, okay, does anybody within this organization want this job? And then they had to spend time, teaching that person that might be in HR that wants to move over to finance because they like finance, and they give that person that job based on kind of their ambition and their tenureship or their seniority. And we're starting to see a lot of that shift. A lot of people are not necessarily caring about seniority unless you're in a union, but a lot of they're based on raw talent, on your experience, on the projects you've done. So what I would suggest for a lot of students is how much you market yourself. LinkedIn is a very powerful tool. You can get endorsements on LinkedIn from professionals that you've worked with. You can post about projects that you've done that have been impactful. And in the world of headhunting, that might be that advantage compared to other people is the projects you worked in the past, how you market that to the general public so that the organizations, when they're seeking somebody, you're not applying for a job, but they're reaching out to you. So like I said, I would recommend getting involved in as many projects as you possibly can while you're still young as a student, so that you can market yourself, and when you market yourself, you become that much more of an attractive potential employee for a lot of these mid-level jobs, not necessarily an entry-level job.
Excellent. Thank you very much, all of you. That was really great. So that concludes the content. Just one last round of applause for all of our speakers. Did a great job building that very important bridge. Thank you so much.